Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here. Today we're going to be reviewing Doctor Who Scratchman, the novel written by Tom Baker. At least partially by Tom Baker. Now, of course, Scratchman was originally a script for a potential movie with Tom Baker and Ian Martin back in the 70s. It just was in developmental hell for a really long time. But the novel did finally come out. It's one I've been wanting to read. This was in that really big box set sent to me by Steven, which I really appreciate, Steven. And of all of the things in the box, this was the one I was most looking forward to because I've been wanting to read Scratchman for a long time, so I wasted no time getting started on it. I find when I first looked at it that the book is pretty much divided into two halves. There's basically like two books in here, a first half and a second half. And it seemed a little odd to me until I finished the story, and then I realized it really is two halves to a whole. They're very different. Much like, the closest thing I can think of to compare it to is the arc. Whereas the first two episodes of the arc are one thing, and the second two parts are another, because there's a twist right there at the middle. And I've talked before about the arc, about how technically that could be two stories, with the second part being a sequel to the first. You could have done the first two stories of the arc, done another story in between, and then had them come back for the third and fourth parts later, and actually had that as a sequel story. It would work like that. This story's a lot like that too, where the second half feels more like a sequel to the first half, even though the events from the first part are leading directly into the second. They're very tonally different. The first half of the story has a very different tone from the second half of the story. And the first half of the story is way better than the second half. I really enjoy the first half of the story, and I love the tone it's got going. The second half of the story kind of falls apart to me. I can see what it's trying to do. It doesn't quite work for me. I feel like the first half of the story is polished a lot more, and reading the notes at the end of the book where they talk about the original script, the first half of the original script was polished a lot more. The second half of the script was a lot more vague. It wasn't as fleshed out. And I feel like whoever came in to help with this, because I don't believe Tom Baker wrote all this by himself. I'm pretty sure somebody went over it. Because the second half doesn't feel as tight as the first half. The first half is great. I love the first half. It very much has that Hinchcliffe horror, scary, atmospheric going on for it. I love it. It's really good. It feels spooky. They're like in Scotland, in this isolated, I don't want to say island, but town, it's very cut off from humanity. Spooky, scary, think horror, Fang rock vibes going on. You see, it builds. It's a slow build up to a point like where the doctor finds out a scarecrow caught his little ball he was going to get. The scarecrow drops it into his hand. So obviously something's up with scarecrows. It does have that human nature, family of blood vibe going on with the scarecrows. And of course the scarecrows. I just kind of ramble, so I'm going to get into spoilers if you haven't read it. Of course the scarecrows are alive. And it has some truly terrifying moments, like when you find toward the beginning of the story the fate of the farmer, and that scene with what happens with the farmer there. And learning the fate of not only the farmer, but his family, his wife, and his two little girls is chilling and creepy. And that scene with the farmer is creepy and well written, and I loved it. Man, was I on board reading that. Watching the Doctor and Sarah and Harry, seeing all this. The book is very descriptive here. Again, it has that very gothic horror Hinchcliffe vibe going that I love. At one point, they get to this church, and then they get split up. They have to split up. Sarah goes back into the TARDIS and has her own stuff going on there as she accidentally lets one of the creatures in, and there's a darkness trying to take over the TARDIS. The whole scenes with her in the TARDIS are really well done. I really like that one room with the tiles that kind of show your past and future in it. That's a neat concept for the TARDIS. I thought that was really neat. Harry, when he goes to town, that scene's a little odd because it's kind of played for comedy. And it doesn't quite fit Harry. One of the things I like about this novel, I'll say up front, is the Fourth Doctor feels very like the Fourth Doctor. A lot of his dialogue is very humorous, tongue-in-cheek, stuff the Fourth Doctor would say. A lot of the way, the wordings of it, especially in the first half, and also some in the second half, feels very Fourth Doctor-ish. I mean, who knows the Fourth Doctor better than the Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker? You know, so it has that kind of Douglas Adams style humor in places with how he talks, which is perfect. I love the fact the Fourth Doctor feels like the Fourth Doctor, and this is one of the best things about the story. He is spot on the Fourth Doctor. Sarah Jane's written really well, too. Harry, not so much. Harry, to me, is decent. But there's this one part there when he's in town where he almost gets killed like 3 times without even realizing it. Because a couple of the Scarecrows almost killed him, but he manages to avoid death by complete coincidence and stop the creatures without ever realizing he's done it. Like, I think the wheelbarrow snags on one of their outfits and pulls it off of them so they collapse into dust. And he doesn't even know what happens. And that doesn't quite seem right for Harry. It's a funny little scene. I'm not saying I don't enjoy it, but it feels a little out of place for Harry. Harry's not quite that naffed, in my opinion. Of course, it has this one character in it, like much of Classic Who, that just makes you want to... You just hope something bad happens to them, because you can tell they're the ones causing a lot of the problems. And I forget her name. It's like Mavis something. She's really annoying, very self-important. You know, thinks everyone should listen to her. She's definitely a thorn in the Doctor's side, and when she kind of when she gets her comeuppance in the story, I was quite pleased indeed. Watching everything going on at the church with the Scarecrows is really good. Like I said, the first half of the story is really good. It falls apart right at the end. I kind of don't like what happens with all of the villagers in the church. And it falls apart right at the end before it jumps into the second half. The second half of the story is tonally very different. It still kind of has this horror vibe going on, but it's different. The second half is more like The Mind Robber from Hell, but not as good as The Mind Robber. Think The Mind Robber if it was held up next to a funhouse mirror that was from hell. You know, it's very confusing to keep up with. I have an easier time keeping up with Ghostlight, to be honest with you. And it goes out there. Like Mind Robber, where anything can happen, or Celestial Toymaker, where anything can happen. Basically, the Doctor ends up in another universe, which is basically hell. And while I like the idea in a lot of shows where hell is what each individual person makes of it, you know, it plays on their own fears, I like that concept. I don't feel like it's executed well here. I like the part when he's riding in the car with basically the ferryman, Sharon. You know, I've never figured out how to pronounce his name, the ferryman who always ferries people across the river Styx. I know it's Charon, but it's one of those things I never see, but I never hear. Like, I never hear. Sharon, Karen, Sharon. I think it's Sharon. I don't know. You ever have that? You ever have those words that you see, but no one ever says? What's another example? Vehemently. He vehemently attacked. I don't know how you pronounce that. I've never heard anyone say it. 40 years on the planet. Never heard anyone say it. I just see it. Yeah, same thing with the ferryman from the river Styx. No one ever says it. I just see it in books. So I don't know how you pronounce it. So he's basically playing the taximan who used to be the police officer, who's basically playing the ferryman. That's interesting. I kind of like that scene. It's kind of odd. A lot of it going on there. The Doctor losing his memories, the Doctor getting interrogated. I actually like that scene. The pinball stuff is weird. Like, there's a spot where they're basically on a giant pinball table. That's just weird. The final confrontation with the Scratchman, with the Doctor and Scratchman, is interesting. Doesn't quite pay off for me, but interesting. The second half is just... It doesn't live up to the first half. It doesn't feel as polished, and it feels so tonally different that I feel like I'm reading 2 separate stories. Like, if you had done these as 2 separate books, that would have worked better for me, because it's hard for me to adjust for how good the first half is to how not so great the second half is. Although the Fourth Doctor still feels like the Fourth Doctor. And there's actually one part I do want to read I thought was funny. It's when he's getting interrogated in the... this is actually in the second part, but it's funny. The Doctor is basically constrained to a chair while this lizard is interrogating him. And the lizard is very, like, lazy, lethargic. and he's basically looking at a bunch of his torture devices, and wickedly sharp objects and saws slid slowly out. Just look at this lot. I'd rather not, I said. That's another thing. This book is written in first-person form from the doctor's point of view, and that took me some adjusting to. Oh, but do, Mr. Timble, the lizard groaned, leaning against the cabinet. I've barely the strength to lift them, let alone wield them with any effort. He somehow managed to raise a small drill that whirled menacingly. What is to be done? I know, I said brightly. If you freed my arms from the field, I could do the best I can to torture myself. That drill, for instance. I glanced down at the chair, wondering how quickly I could drill through the armrest. Or maybe a saw. I'm sure I could do a lot of damage to myself before I talked. Oh, that's very kind of you. I couldn't. Timble shuddered with self-disgust. He advanced on me, the drill whirling fast and nasty. What would you like to tell me? Well, what would you like me to tell you? I asked, trying not to flinch. Oh, well, the lizard paused, turning the drill off. Nothing, really. Mostly I interrogate people just to break their spirit. Consider it broken, I vowed. Oh, very good, very good. The lizard tapped the side of his nose with the drill. After all, it's doubtful you know anything important, isn't it? Oh, highly doubtful, I promised. And then at this point, basically, the lizard falls asleep. He's so lethargic. He goes, Sweet Morpheus, take me. And a few moments later, he begins to snore. Well, I'd never been tortured like that before. Stuck in the chair, unable to get out. I really took against the snoring. A long time passed. The chair was uncomfortable. The sound of the lizard snoring was utterly horrible. A creeping boredom settled over me and became stifling. I suspected this was the most effective torture I'd ever endured. Excuse me, I called. Excuse me, I'm in a bit of a hurry here. The lizard ignored me and I had to wait unendurably until it finally woke up, yawned extravagantly, and sprang off the table. I really feel like it's a fresh start, don't you? The lizard pottered over to the drill. And this is recharged too. Some luck at last. Shall we get to it? Absolutely, I agreed. Let me skip on a little bit. I found I could move my arms. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out some string, elastic bands, and a paper bag. Is that money? The lizard said eagerly. Afraid not, I apologized. These are jelly babies. Would you like one? Oh, that's very kind of you, but I couldn't, the lizard said, reaching down to take a sweet. He chewed it thoughtfully and then pocketed the bag. What's to become of me, he wailed. Oh, I don't know, I muttered. Let's see. If it wasn't for being able to hibernate, I don't know what I'd do. I'd just slip off for the rest of the week, and then we'll pick it up next week. Wait, I yelled aghast at the prospect of spending any longer in the chair. What do you want to know? He says, why are you here? Well, I think I died, I began. The details are hazy. I was probably doing something heroic. That's normally how I die. I love that. I was probably doing something heroic. That's normally how I die. Yeah, I think that's mostly about it. But the interrogation scene overall is very humorous. I liked it. I tend to like Fourth Doctor torture scenes. They're funny. I can't stand being tortured with someone with cold hands. Tortured by someone with cold hands. So it has that going for it. Also, for some reason, again, we're getting into spoilers, there's a couple parts where the 13th Doctor shows up for no reason at all. Now, to be fair, her actual dialogue in the story, for the most part, is written better than some of her dialogue in the show. She doesn't actually annoy me. What she's saying doesn't annoy me as much as she does in the show sometimes. Her presence being there, though, makes no sense. I don't know why the 13th Doctor is in this story. She shows up twice. And one time, just to give the 4th Doctor a little pep talk that kind of helps him get his self-confidence back. Yes, the 13th Doctor shows up to give the 4th Doctor self-confidence. This is like World War II Germans showing up and giving Jews a pep talk about kindness and compassion. Makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. The 13th Doctor, self-confidence Doctor, that's what we call her, right? Yeah, she shows up, and then there's even a spot at the end where the 4th Doctor basically says, I couldn't have done it without you, and I nearly threw the book. One, I don't understand why she's here. There's no reason for her to be here. No reason at all. Her actual dialogue, again, for the most part, isn't bad. It's just the fact she shouldn't be there, and the idea of her having to give the 4th Doctor a pep talk to boost his confidence is just silly. Absolutely silly. I mean, we literally have the worst Doctor and the best Doctor. I mean, I think Tom Baker is the best Doctor, and Tom Baker's always self-confident. The Fourth Doctor's always self-confident. So I don't, the whole time they're talking, I'm like, this is silly. This is like fan fiction by somebody from Twitter who doesn't know anything about the Fourth Doctor. And I'm willing to bet that scene, either of those scenes, none of those had to be, neither of those are written by Tom Baker. I am sure of it. I am absolutely sure of it. 100% positive of it. It just is weird. It just reads weird. Like, it doesn't, again, I'm not mad at her dialogue. It's written better than some of her actual dialogue in the show. But I am mad that the Fourth Doctor basically thanks her for helping him. Because the way it's phrased is he wouldn't have been able to get out of the situation he was in, because he was basically about to succumb to the place he was at, if she hadn't given him a little pep talk. And that's nuts and silly, and I don't buy it. And there's no reason for her to be in this story. You could cut both of her scenes out of this story, and it would change nothing. Nothing. There's no reason for her to be there. So that, if there was ever a scene in the book that made me want to hurl it, that was it. Overall, if I had to sum up Scratchman in one word, it would be disappointing. The Fourth Doctor is great in it. It has good points. The Fourth Doctor feels like the Fourth Doctor. Who writes the Fourth Doctor better than Tom Baker? And there's definitely a lot in the first half which does feel like Tom Baker. And like I said, they even mentioned in there the first half of the script was much more fleshed out to begin with. And so he does feel like the Fourth Doctor in a lot of it, and a lot of his dialogue and the way he acts. Sarah Jane has done really well. The first half of the story is great. I love most of the first half of the story. It's really, really good. Very atmospheric. Lots of tension. Love it. Very Hinchcliffe era. The second half loses me. It has moments, like the one I read, but it's so disappointing compared to the first half. I just didn't care for it as much. It's not one I'm going to go back and read for a while. I'm definitely glad Steven sent it, because I've always wanted to read it. And I'm glad I got an opportunity to read it. But I do find it very disappointing as an end result. So, Scratchman, have you read it? What do you think of it? Do you agree with me? Are you still trying to figure out why the 13th Doctor's there? So comment down below and let me know, because I always enjoy hearing from you guys and hearing your thoughts on it. Other things to do while I have you here. If there's anything you would like to send me, my P.O. Box is down in the description below. I want to give a shout out to Steven. I appreciate him sending this with a lot of the other stuff he sent. So check that out if you're interested in sending anything. I have a link to my Amazon wish list down there as well. And my Amazon UK wish list, which is much shorter, is down there as well. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me that way. I do an exclusive Patreon video every week for my $10 tier and up. But sometimes I let my lower tiers, like my $2 tier and my $5 tier, sometimes I post videos for them as well. Lost my train of thought. So if that's something that would interest you, if you would like to support me that way, there's a link to that down in the description below. I would also appreciate if you would click the like button, click the subscribe button. I am trying to grow the channel to 1,000 subscribers. There's just so many opportunities that open up when the channel hits 1,000 subscribers. There's so much I want to do with it. Really looking forward to doing some live streams at some point. That would help me out. But most importantly, I want to say thank you for watching.